It's May 1991, and two men are sitting outside a random and quite ordinary-looking warehouse in the Bay Area city of Hayward, just a few minutes south of the city of Oakland. The two men in the van are police officers, and they've been watching this warehouse for months now. The warehouse was listed as a storehouse for porcelain from China, but DEA agents suspected that it was where tons of imported drugs were kept. After the three men went in, the agents decided that it was time to strike. They called for backup and went into the warehouse. The three men in the building quickly surrendered to the police. There was no resistance from them. The police always expected to find heroin and drugs in the busted warehouse, but they had never expected to find the quantity they found that night. They had unwittingly completed the second largest drug bust in history, and their names would forever be written in the history books. In this video, we'll be chronicling the 5 largest drug busts in history. We'll be talking about the effects of these busts and the circumstances surrounding them. In this video, you'll learn about the lengths police officers go to stop the importation of illicit drugs and the lengths criminals will go to ensure their business never stops. The Nigerian drug bust.
Enforcement agency have confiscated what is described as the biggest singular cocaine seizure in the history of its anti-narcotic fight in Nigeria. The agency busted a warehouse.
It's September 2022 in Nigeria, the largest black nation in the world. Nigeria doesn't have cartels like South America. It doesn't have large drug-dealing mafias like Europe, and an organized crime structure like North America. That's why the drug bust in Nigeria shocked not only Nigerians, but everyone outside the country who heard the news. The organization that was busted is an international drug syndicate that the Nigerian authorities had been pursuing since 2018. Interestingly, there were no details on the name of this cartel, so we don't know whether a recognized cartel was behind it or if it was perpetrated by a newer actor on the drug scene. The bust was made in Lagos, the commercial capital of the country. According to the authorities, the bust was the result of a well-coordinated and intelligence-led operation that lasted 2 days across different locations in the state. After the bust, the police confirmed that 4 drug barons, including a Jamaican and the warehouse manager, were now in custody. The men arrested by the police were not caught at the warehouse where the bust was made. Instead, there was a statewide manhunt to smoke them out of nondescript bars and hotels around the country. The drug bust was the largest of such busts in Nigerian history, and it was the largest seizure of cocaine in Nigeria's history. The cocaine in question was stored in a total of 10 large containers and 10 travel bags in a warehouse. The goal of the warehouse owners was to use Nigeria as a conduit to distribute the drugs to places like Europe, West Africa, and even America. In total, the authorities seized about 1.8 tons of cocaine in the house. The cocaine was worth about $278 million. Dance with the Waves. The name of the ship was Dance with Waves, and it was quite an ordinary ship from the outside. However, one thing no one knew was that Dance with Waves wasn't only dancing with waves. The ship was also dancing with drug traffickers. The ship was intercepted by Irish authorities when it was southwest of Misenhead off the west coast of Ireland. The authorities realized that Dance with the Waves had no clearance to be in Irish waters and decided to search it. What they found on the ship shocked them. The small crew of Dance with the Waves were transporting 400 million euros worth of cocaine from Venezuela to Liverpool. The goal of the ship was to import all that cocaine into the UK and distribute it. However, those plans were foiled by the watchful Irish authorities. In due time, the 3 men found on the ship, David Brian Mufford, William Samuel Dew, and Christopher Wiggins, were later sentenced to 10 years in prison. Investigations by the police are yet to reveal the collaborators of these 3 men. It is easy to speculate about the criminal organizations behind the plot, but it's hard to say for certain which organization was behind it. The Australian Affair.
Australian police say the drugs were intercepted by US authorities off the coast of Ecuador in November.
Some drug busts are straightforward affairs where the police simply chance upon a shipment of drugs. However, some are more complicated than that, and this Australian drug bust is a perfect example. The bust was a joint operation by US and Australian authorities. The first part of the drug bust was the interception of a cocaine shipment worth about $1 billion Australian dollars, or 677 million off the coast of Ecuador. However, the Australian authorities withheld the news of the bust. Instead of going to the press with details of the seizure, they replaced the cocaine on the ship with a fake substance and continued the ship's journey to Australia. The Australian arm of the drug ring waiting to receive the shipment of drugs had no clue that the ship had been busted. Therefore, they continued to expect a shipment of drugs like it was business as usual. The ship was then dropped 40 nautical miles west of Perth, the capital of Western Australia. After dropping the ship off, the police used drones and helicopters to watch the bait and see whether the criminal gang would fall for it. And that's exactly what they did. The gang tried to retrieve the cargo with 2 boats and successfully retrieved it. However, they made one mistake. They didn't check the substance in the shipment, and the police promptly arrested them with the fake cocaine when they got back to shore. According to the authorities, most of the people in the Australian arm of the gang are Australians. However, the gang has close ties to a Mexican drug cartel. The authorities didn't disclose what cartel that was. They only disclosed that the bust was the largest in Australian history and that it represented up to a year's worth of Australian cocaine consumption. The warehouse bust. It's 1991, and America is in the middle of a war against drugs, and drugs are winning. By a lot. However, the American authorities were determined to get some wins. One of those wins was a drug bust that happened in California. In May of that year, the DEA began suspecting 4 men of running a heroin smuggling cartel. They suspected that the smugglers imported heroin into the country through California and stored them in a huge warehouse in the state. The warehouse was supposed to be housing porcelain imported from China, but the police believed that it was something else. The police had intelligence that suggested that the men were importing heroin from Thailand through Taiwan to the United States. After months of watching the warehouse, the police eventually attacked. They arrested 3 men in the warehouse and discovered an extraordinary amount of heroin. The amount of heroin they found blew their minds away. When the counting was done, they figured they had found 1,059 pounds of China white heroin. The street value of that quantity was about $5 billion. According to DEA agents, that was about 5% of the world's total annual production of heroin. The SYLMAR California cocaine bust of 1989.
Side of the world's largest cocaine bust still causing problems for Los Angeles police tonight. 20 tons of cocaine was confiscated from this warehouse on Friday. So far, 8 arrests have been made.
SYLMAR is about the quietest town you're likely to see, but in the autumn of 1989, it became home to the most explosive drug bust in history. One day in September 1989, the police received a tip from a concerned citizen about suspicious behavior that was happening at a storage facility in the neighborhood. The citizen noticed that a very large truck had been making deliveries to the unit and that it was very odd. At the time, the American state was at the peak of its war on drugs, so the police were on the lookout for this sort of suspicious activity. The police came down to the unit and followed a vehicle leaving it. The vehicle quickly noticed the tail and tried to evade the police, but was eventually pulled over. The car was searched and about 20 kilograms of cocaine was found in it. This gave the police probable cause to search the warehouse, and they did. 2 days later, the police came back to the warehouse with a search warrant and a battalion of policemen, but they didn't need that to crack the case. When they opened the unit, they found 20 tons of cocaine and $10 million in cash. It was the largest drug bust in history. The street value of the cocaine was about $10 billion. Notebooks found in the storehouse revealed that the cocaine was originally produced in Colombia by the Medellin and Cali cartels. Till now, the SYLMAR California cocaine bust of 1989 remains the largest drug bust in history. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to smash the like and subscribe buttons. Goodbye.